As we mark 50 November since the JFK assassination, we turn to what happened behind the doors of Parkland Hospital.
Few doctors speak publicly about what they saw that day, but tonight our Janet St. James has a rare look inside their attempts to save the president.
Were you there when the president's body arrived?
Our car was just behind the president's as we moved in toward the hospital.
On November 22nd, 1963, a crackling voice on a public address speaker and an operator on the cafeteria's red emergency telephone called doctors to Trauma Room 1, STAT, at Parkland Hospital.
The impact of that's tremendous.
Dr. Ron Jones, chief resident of surgery at the time, remembers.
As we looked at the president, I never saw any evidence of life. I didn't see him breathe. His eyes were open and fixed, and but not knowing the extent of his injury, we went ahead and tried to resuscitate him.
Dr. Jones says the room was so crowded he couldn't even grab a pair of sterile gloves. He worked on the president barehanded. We
knew there was a large hole injury to the back of the head, but we didn't stop to look at that. We were trying to get an airway established and an IV going and to get blood started.
Outside the door, Jacqueline Kennedy stood motionless.
Jackie was looking out at the crowd that had assembled out here.
And that's where Dr. Norman Borge, at the time a medical student, approached with a folding chair and a cup of water.
And glued to that water, I approached her with that and waited until I looked at her, and she was waiting for me to look at her. She smiled. She says, "Thank you very much." I said, "You're very welcome." This article was published in 1960.
Dr. Borge, now a retired family practice doctor, believes he got the only smile Mrs. Kennedy gave that terrible day. Inside Trauma Room 1, doctors knew there was nothing to smile about. Dr. Jones stepped out, only to be approached by the FBI and the Secret Service.
And he said, "I'm with Secret Service, and I need to call Joseph Kennedy and tell him the condition of his son." And that was an emotional thing for me. And so I told them that he was not doing well.
You didn't tell him that he was dead?
Didn't tell him he was dead.
Why not?
Well, number one, he had not been pronounced. Number two, Mrs. Kennedy did not want him pronounced until the priest arrived, and the priest had not arrived, so I decided not to be the one that broke that news.
2 days later, the Parkland team would work just as hard trying to save the life of Lee Harvey Oswald. At Parkland today, a sign in a waiting room marks the spot where Trauma Room 1 used to be. There is also a small memorial in an administrative hall.
It was history, and I happened to be there.
Now, all in their 80s, doctors who shared a tragic brush with history that dark day at Parkland Hospital say it only reinforced their mission: to save all lives, whether they be paupers or presidents. Janet St. James, Channel 8 News.